If you looked at your bulletin and you checked out the sermon title, FOMO, that's what I was going to preach. It came from that scripture that was read. You know, anybody know what that means? FOMO? Fear of missing out, right? That's kind of here, but at 6:30 this morning, something that's been nagging me went from mind to pen to paper. So here we go. How many of you have cars? Raise your hand. Got a car? Raise your hand. How many of you drive that car? Raise your hand. How many of you have driven that car and had the experience, the wonderful, wonderful experience of driving that car and the check engine light comes on? What's the first thought that goes across your mind when you see that? Yeah, something like that's exactly right. Oh no, what's wrong now? Can I drive this car anymore? Do I need to pull over? Well, let me just say one thing, that if you go to the owner's manual and you look up that little icon, whatever it is, it says something really scary like, stop the car now, pull off the road, and call service to get you to the nearest mechanic. Being who I am, I've driven for at least 6 months with a check engine light on at one time or another. But it's really kind of scary because you don't know what it is, right? And they kind of put the fear of God into you. And it always is tied to your emissions. That's where you find out very quickly. It's tied to your emissions. And if you do take your car in, the first thing the mechanic always says, it's like your computer. They say, is it plugged in, right? When you take your car in for that, they say, is your gas cap on tight? Because the air getting in will trick whatever that reading sensor is. That's not so bad. But the other thing that can cause it is if you got a tank of bad gas. You got a tank of bad gas. Maybe the octane wasn't right, maybe, I don't know. But if you've ever gotten bad gas somewhere, that light comes on very, very quickly. And it will dissipate when you have, usually when you have run all that gas through your car and the mechanic plugs his little thing in the dashboard and turns that light off. It can be just that easy. But it's very frightening at the point. You see, that's the real issue. What you've been putting in your car. It's not the car. At the first service, when I said, what's your first response? Somebody said, well, get a new car. You don't need a new car. That's not the issue. What you need to do is think about what you put in it. You know, folks that have like German-made cars, Audis or BMWs, they say 92 octane. Well, if you want to test my theory, run a little 87 in there for a while, and the light will come on. You see, what you put in, whether you put in the good or the bad, the cheapest fuel or the correct fuel, what its needs were designed for or not, will cause you problems or keep you going. Now, hold that in your mind because I'm going to switch gears here, but I will come back to it. You see, and the switching gears is that maybe it's because this week is the 40th anniversary of my ordination into ministry. Thank you. Or perhaps it's because my oldest grandchild, who's here this morning, enters first grade. You know, first grade. That's a big deal. But I've been thinking a lot about her and my other grandchildren, and also recalling the first time I held any of them in my arms. You know, that's a magical moment, the first time you hold that child in your arms. And I don't know about you, but you know, everybody looks, is everything working, functioning, all that kind of stuff. But when I hold them in my arms, the first thought I have is, I wonder what they will be. Will they be a teacher? Will they be a doctor? Will they be a librarian, a seamstress, a mother? You know, all those thoughts run through your minds. I wonder what they will be. Maybe even the president, huh? Only I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But, you know, am I alone in that? You kind of look at that and it's all just wrapped up there, the present and the future and all those things. I read somewhere where time, this author was looking at time as a linear line, you know, beginning, end. But it wasn't a line that is connected. It is a line made up of very small dots. And when you step away, what you see is the line. But when you get in close, what you see are all the little dots, you know, the things, the events, the times, the moments, the stages of life, the titles and identities that we have in life. That makes perfect sense to me. It just doesn't go like this. You know, once upon a time we're a teenager, and then we're a college student, and then we're this, and then we're that. We have all these little dots in our lives that are very specific, and if we slow down, we can name them. They represent a continuum, and yet there are little things, some which are bigger dots than others, but nonetheless, they represent achievements and moments and things we have strived for in our life. If I look at myself, I could say I am an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and a minister at Pass-A-Grille Church. Dot. Now that becomes a bigger one because it's been 18 years. It says on the door to my office, it says precisely that. But you know what? The plaque on my office door that says that's really, really thin. And it occasionally falls off the wall. And I say that because, yeah, that's an identity, that's a part of me, but it's really quite superficial. You know, saying that I am this is one thing, but even that role or that title has no meaning without the other stuff, the depth that goes down below it. The relationships that have been built and are a part of us, you know, those family connections, the births, the deaths, the tragedies, the successes, the graduations, all those kinds of things, they tell the real story, not of a title or an identity. They tell the story of who I am, who we are. The title, that dot, in a way, only scratches the surface. It's very superficial. It only scratches the surface of who I am. And someday it will go away. It will not be my title anymore. You know, I mean, how many of you know that I hate broccoli? Despise most vegetables. Love mashed potatoes and gravy. Most of the things that are not good for you. I like yellow cars, especially Camaros that go fast. You know, I guess what I'm saying, you're the same way. You all have titles, you all have names, but there's so much more to you than those things. And those tell the story, those fill in the connections, and they relate to not just who we are, but what our priorities in life have been, where and how, you know, we invested time. You invested a lot of time and energy to get to this place, to earn those titles, to be that person. You know, we want to be somebody, and I don't mean that in a real derogatory, prideful way, but we want to be somebody. And so we work at it. We work at it. But as I said, the beauty of those fields of flowers are here today and gone tomorrow, and so it is with those identities as well. You know, when we were in Chicago and Sears was laying off people, you know how you found out if you were laid off by Sears? You came to work and the key to your office didn't work anymore. That's how you found out. You see how superficial, how thin that veneer that most of us know one another by? And what I am saying is, we are so much more. Life is not about the dot, or what I would call the be. You have to be somebody, the be. You know, it's not about that. It's about the little dots or the little parts in between that have led us to that point and will let us beyond. You see, life isn't about the be, it's about the becoming. You follow me? It's about the becoming. Be sounds static and fixed, and this is who I be. But it's here and it's gone. I am becoming. And that's at the heart of this text. I mean, what is it you are becoming, and do you worry about the right part of that? You know, maybe when we raise our children, maybe when you look at the baby the first time, we're asking the wrong question. Not who or not what he or she will be, but who will they be? Because the what they will be really doesn't matter. It's the who. It's the who. Whatever they do, you know, will they find joy? You know, most of us really don't care what our children will be. We just want them to be happy. Be happy, be fulfilled, find satisfaction. You see, that stuff comes from what you put in the tank. That's where that comes from. That who we are is what we invest in, what we put in the tank. The other stuff is all transitory. It can be fake. It can be just a good show, but it's who we are that helps us to move on no matter what we come to. You know, my youngest daughter, I'm going to brag a little bit on this one for a second, not because she's any better than any of my other kids, but because the story fits, and I need a story at this moment. It says, find a story right here. But seriously, you know, she works for Kobe downtown, Kobe Loyalties, and she dreams up loyalty programs for companies like Nike and American Eagle and all, Victoria's Secret. There's a lot of dreams there, I think. But she dreams up loyalty programs, which I don't understand. And when she went to college, she didn't take one business class, not one technology class, none of that kind of stuff. Not one. And you know what they said to her? They said, we can teach you what you need to do the job. We cannot teach you to be who you are. It's about what's in the tank. What's in the tank? And are we, you know, because the tank runs dry. You got to refill it. And are we putting in the octane that we need? Because regardless of what you do, regardless of what you face, regardless of where life takes you on that continuum I talked about, what gets you through and what makes it worth living is the who, not the what. Not the what be you, but who be you. I always think when I see, you know, Marines are probably the proudest of all the military branches, and once a Marine, always a Marine, I think they say, but you see the flags and you see the shirts and you see the bumper stickers, you see it everywhere, which I have great respect for them. But it always makes me think, when there's so much of that, if that was the dot you got stuck on. You know, is that the duck you got stuck on in your life? And we're challenged in order to move on. I take it a grandchild once, Nini. Yeah. Never Papa, it's always Nini. I be nothing in that category. In the book Great Expectations, if you ever read it by Charles Dickens, you know, there's that story, the main character, the woman who is left at the altar, and her life stops at that moment. She doesn't change a thing. The house, everything is exactly as it was, the clocks, the cake, everything exactly as it was on the day she was left at the altar. She is frozen in that dot, that one event. The continuum of her life is all defined by that. The Bible has an illustration of this when Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed and God tells Lot to take his family and leave. You know, his wife, she has a hard time leaving, and she turns, and you know, God says, don't look back, just go. And the wife turns, and when she turns, she becomes a pillar of salt. frozen in that moment and in time, and that will define her forever. You know, as I look at the world, when I was ordained, a mentor of mine said, man, I'm glad the last 40 years are yours and the last 40 years were mine and the next 40 years are yours. And I'm just about to that point of thinking that, because when I look at the world and then I look at my grandchildren, I hug me, I have to tell you I have concerns and I get worried. I have concerns about what the future holds for them that is different than what it held for me. You know, I have 3 girls, 3 granddaughters, and, you know, so much of the progress it seems like we made for women is getting slapped on right now in terms of their independence and so many things. I worry. I want them to achieve and to be all that they can be without things in their way that don't need to or try to control or limit them. I worry about the 2 grandchildren that are biracial, and I see the hate, which I don't understand. You know, we had a president who was biracial, and everybody, I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people always saw him as black. Well, you know, why? First of all, he's a person. Second of all, nobody ever said why. Why? And I just worry about those things, friends. I worry about them a lot. And what people have done in their fear, not just their worry, is they say, well, we got to shut it all off. We got to stop it all down. We got to keep these kids from reading Catcher in the Rye, Lord of the Flies. I read Lord of the Flies, and I don't know. I've never had the urge to live on an island and do what they did. You know, whenever they talk about limiting books in a library, I always want to ask them, well, would you accept the Bible being there? Because the Bible's got a lot of violence. The Bible has a lot of the same stuff that they say these other books cause all these problems. Why, when these 2 men show up at Sodom and Lot's afraid, he says, well, you know, don't do anything. Take my daughters. Do whatever you want with them. Well, that's a pretty gross thing to say. If it was in any other book, it probably... You see what I'm saying? If you aren't exposed, if you don't learn, if you don't read, how do you ever know the difference between good and bad, hate and love, what's right and what's wrong? Because that's all a process of becoming who we are, who we're meant to be. And we were all meant to be, and we are children of God, but to accept that and to fulfill that and to help others fulfill that, not just to be, but to become. You see, the only thing that stops us from becoming is ourselves and what we put in each other's way. What we put, you know, this is not in my notes, so bear with me. I attended a liberal arts college. You know, I'm a product of liberal arts, and there were a lot of classes I had to take that I saw no need for. But I'm grateful. But I'm very grateful because they exposed me to things and challenged me on all this stuff. What are we afraid of? Why are we so anxious? You know, if we do what we could and what we should, just like the birds and the flowers, you know, we blossom, we last, we bring beauty to the world. And if we accept that in seeking to fill one another and ourselves with the right stuff, our worry begins to dissipate because we sense that even in the hardest time, we have what we take, and we believe that God is on our side. And if we don't have that and try to do everything on our own, then, you know, how's that working for you? You see, that's our challenge. We have to ask ourselves in this day and age, what are we putting in our tanks? As individuals and as a society, what are we putting in our tanks? Do we put in love, hope, self-esteem, or fill it up with fear, rebellion, and chaos? What are we putting in our tanks? There is a lot of bad in the world. There's a lot of bad and evil in the world, but how do you know the difference, and how do you know how to stand up to it and try to make it right if you've never been given that freedom to understand and to think and to broaden yourself? You can't know what's right and what's wrong if you haven't had the right stuff put in your tank. Doesn't mean you can't be exposed to it, because nobody can be sheltered that much, and you can't. You know, when my son was growing up, he wanted to be a police officer, and so when he was in high school, we thought it would be a good parenting skill to say, yeah, you don't want to do that. You get in trouble, you might not get a job. He said to me, now that he's been a police officer some 16 years, Dad, if I knew then what I know now, I would have had a lot more fun. But how do you learn that if somebody isn't trying to instill those things? How many of you, I started with cars, I'm going to end with cars. How many of you have a recent model car? Let's say the last 5 years. Raise your hands. Do you have all kinds of stuff in that car that distracts you? I have a 2012. I got rid of my newest car because with my ADHD or ADD or whatever they call it, I can't drive because I'm always touching things and looking at things and distracted. I said, why does my insurance go down with this? I'm going to have a wreck. And I don't even know how to use half of it. I don't know what it's even for. As it is, I have a basic in the car I have now, which is a 2012, and when my phone, you know, I like that part where you can talk as you drive, the minute it starts dialing, the person says to me in some British accent, "You are now disconnected." And it connects. Okay, I don't get it. It's like my phone. I have this wonderful phone, I don't know what all it does. So you have all this other stuff that's been added to your car, but you know what has never gone away? You still have that check engine light. You still have that check engine light. You see, what you put in the tank still matters. So when you leave today, I hope you take home one thought. One thought, one question, one challenge with you, one thing to seriously and honestly consider, and that is, who are you? Who are we? Who are you? Who are we becoming? Amen.